We're going to convert our lightbox into a gallery of photos. I want to show you how you can cycle through a series of elements. The JavaScript is a bit complex, but really interesting and illustrates how to get at elements that are parents of current objects. Now, the first thing I want to do is figure out how many other image elements are on this list of thumbnails. If you take a look at our structure here, you'll see that we have a bunch of image elements, and those image elements are inside list items that are inside an unordered list. When we click on one of these images, information about the image is passed on to our function. The function doesn't really know which order this image is in, so we need to figure that out. But it also needs to know how many of these images there are if we want to be able to cycle through them. So we need to make sure that we can use that. I've written a little line of code here that takes a look at the original image that we clicked on, and it backs up to the parent element, in this case the line item or the list item of that image, and then it backs up to the parent of that list item, which is the unordered list, and then it executes this method that gets all of the images inside that element. Once it has that, it stores them in this items list. The getElementsByTagName creates an array. We want to know how many elements are in that list, so we're going to use the .length keyword here to calculate how many elements are in this list of images. Now we need to figure out which element we've clicked on. Just because it passes information about the element, it doesn't exactly pass which number this element is on this list of images. It just simply doesn't know that. Now, it's really important that we put this piece of code after this piece of code, because we're going to compare the high resolution location of the thumbnail that is clicked on with the high resolution version of each item in this list. So we've written this loop right here, and this loop goes through each item on the list. It finds out what that item's high resolution source is, and it compares it to the high resolution source of the image that we've clicked on. If they're both the same, then it assigns that ID to a variable called listID. We need to delete the part of this code that fades out the overlay, because we don't want the overlay to fade out. We want the images to play through one after the other. Now we're going to add a bit of code here to cycle through the images when a high resolution image is clicked on. So here we've added a bit of code that checks to see if this is the last image in the list, now that we have those two pieces of information, and it shows the next image in the list. If this is the last image on the list, then when that image is clicked on, it shows the first image on the list. Now we're calling the same function that we're in, showImage, with that information, and so we're calling this function recursively. You could use the same type of code if you wanted to build buttons that advance or went through the list of images. As we click on each image, you can see that it cycles through the list of images now. Now our transitions are a little boring, so this is a great time to use some of the things that you learned about transitions and modify your transition code to get some very interesting transitions. Here's some really cool transitions that animate these objects in 3D. I need to add a bit of perspective to this. So I'm going to go to the overlay element and add the perspective. Remember, the perspective attribute goes in the parent of an object. So I don't add it to my images. I have to add it to the overlay that has the images. And now you can see that my 3D transitions are much more interesting. You can see here that I'm using different translations to get some really interesting effects. Hopefully you spent some time creating some interesting transitions for your galleries. In this video, I've also showed you how to get to elements that are parents of current objects. Another really interesting and useful technique in JavaScript.